All right, a full week of preview episodes for Rutgers men's basketball ahead of the start of the 24-25 season on Wednesday, November 6th. Did a Big Ten preview on Monday with Joe Jackson of Feed the Post, talking about some of his film breakdown observations of Rutgers' exhibition against St. John's, as well as the outlook of the Big Ten and kind of the floor and ceiling for this team. Wanted to do something in this episode. I wanted to focus on that 22-0 run that Rutgers had against St. John's in that exhibition, and to look at some big picture takeaways from that run that could tell us a lot about this team, or are things that this team needs to do to be able to reach its potential this coming season. Obviously, they lost the game. They struggled down the stretch. They had several turnovers. They could not get stops inside. The defensive rebounding was suspect, to say the least. We know those are areas and things they have to get better on. From a rotational standpoint, I don't think things were what they're going to be for several different factors in that game. But what we saw in that 22-0 run were some really encouraging trends that if Rutgers can play, obviously you can't expect them to have a 22-0 run very often, but there's some fundamental kind of principles that they executed in that stretch that we haven't seen from this team really ever, that jumped out to me that I wanted to talk about. So the first one was during that 22-0 stretch, they were down 17-8. They go on that big run. It's early in the game. Ace Bailey's struggling to find a shot. Kadari Richmond gets his second foul. He checks out of the game. And then Rutgers, with a lineup that responded, kind of seized the opportunity. And it really was a team effort in terms of what they were doing. In terms of shot selection, so they made 8 of 11 shots from the field during this 22-0 run. The thing that jumped out to me was, of those 11 shots, yes, they made 8 of them, but 9 of those 11 shots were either at the rim or behind the arc. That is modern basketball. Now, Rutgers didn't play a ton of transition. They didn't score a ton in transition in this game. They were, pushing the pace at times. They struggled on the boards, so that's part of it. They struggled, defensively in the second half. But in this 22-0 stretch, you really saw them create havoc for St. John's. They were disruptive. They forced a ton of turnovers. But the fact is, they made all 4 of their layups and dunks in the game where they just shot about 50% from the rim. But in terms of where you're taking your shots, 4 shots at the rim, 5 shots from behind the arc, just 2 mid-range shots. This team went to die in mid-range last year, and it really isn't the way modern offense is being played now. And you're still going to see this team take some mid-range shots with Jay Will, with Harper, with Ace Bailey. That's surely going to happen. But this team was so effective when they played with a purpose offensively, and it all came from their defense, which is super encouraging because that's the way Steve Peichel, we know defense is the identity of this program, and there's a lot of things they have to get better on defensively. But the fact that they were able to generate that type of offensive, those offensive looks, to get those types of shots off of their defense was super encouraging. And I think a developmental step that this team needs to continue to get better at. But the fact that you saw it so highlighted in this 22-0 run, for me, really jumped out as a super encouraging thing. Again, they made 8 of 11 shots. They were 3 of 5 from the 3-point line, 3 of 4 from the foul line as well. So that was encouraging. But the fact that they were able to take high percentage, high value shots when they were dominant defensively and really created problems for St. John's was a really mature step for a team that's really in the beginning stages of their development. Also, defensively, they forced 6 turnovers in that stretch. I should mention also they only committed 2 turnovers in that stretch. This stretch comprised of over 6 minutes in the game, 6:21 of the clock exactly, where they went on that 22-0 run. They forced 6 turnovers. They had 3 steals, 2 blocks. They put a ton of pressure on St. John's. Exactly what I kind of expected from this team with their length, with their athleticism, even in the half court, just putting pressure on the guards, getting St. John's out of their offense, getting them to start later in the shot clock. Dylan Harper had a steal at one point where he just, in terms of his physical size, completely outmatched the ball handler, and I forget who it was, forced a turnover, but had him starting the offense way up near half court. And it was just obvious the potential there. Dylan has to get more consistent, but he's going to be a matchup nightmare against pretty much every point guard he plays. And he's going to be able to use his athleticism and use his length to really be disruptive. And I think it's going to be a real kind of key for Rutgers in their defensive sets. Jordan Durkak is an absolute defensive monster. NEC Defensive Player of the Year, in addition to be the overall Player of the Year. During this stretch, Durkak had three rebounds, 2 blocks, a steal, also had 2 assists, did have a turnover, but he was doing all the little things. And he got a lot of run in this game. I don't think he's going to get that much run every game. I think it's going to be situational, but he certainly stepped up. And he was a key driver to this 22-0 run. He gave them energy. He gave them aggressiveness on the defensive end. He played within himself. The block he had in that run was just phenomenal. And, kind of reminded me of how Caleb McConnell would come out of nowhere and get a big block in a key spot. So Durkak certainly flashed a lot there. J. Mike was out there as well for a stretch. Obviously the smallest player on the team in terms of scholarship players, but he did have a steal. He also had a transition basket. He had 2 rebounds. So he did some gritty work there. But overall, just in terms of their defensive effort in this stretch, forcing 6 turnovers. And also, St. John's was just 0 of 6 from the floor during this 6+ minute stretch. Only 6 shots with 6 turnovers. I mean, that's phenomenal. And if Rutgers can play defense like that. So one thing that, is kind of analytically a thing now, Evan Maiwa has kind of made it popular, is talking about kill shots, right? So a kill shot is a run of 10 or more without the opponent scoring. So how many kill shots can you deliver as a team? And how many kill shots do you give up as a team? And, there's a whole analytical formula measuring that. And obviously the better teams come out on the better end of that quite a bit. So I think when you have offensive players like Ace and Dylan, they can heat up and they can get on a real roll. And if you can be consistent defensively, you don't have to be great defensively, but if you can be good defensively and you can have the type of size advantage, athleticism, we know they're going to play physical. How much they're going to mix the press in remains to be seen, but it's super intriguing for this team. But if you can get some stops, and then you have the offensive firepower that you do, it's super encouraging that this team's going to be able to deliver a lot more kill shots than they surrender. Because on the flip side of that is, one problem we've seen with Rutgers in the past, even with the good teams, is dry spells where you don't get a bucket for 5-6 minutes and it just kills you. And this team offensively, I think you're going to see those kind of dry spells few and far between. And I think that's a stat to watch for. And I'm going to be talking about it all season. But I think kill shots is something that Rutgers can really maximize with this team. And obviously the defense is going to be a big part of it. But offensively, they're there on both ends, just in terms of their ability to get rolling and also the ability to kind of prevent droughts. They had one stretch in the game. I think they went 4 minutes without a field goal. They did get to the line. But again, this wasn't close to their max effort in terms of an offensive end. I think, they're going to have to share the ball basketball better. Dylan Harper's going to have to be a better facilitator. I don't think they ran a lot in transition. Jeremiah Williams did not have one of his better games. So there was a lot of things that didn't happen offensively that give me hope that this team is just scratching the surface on the potential. Also, a concern is rebounding for this team. But during that 6+ minute stretch, they only allowed 1 rebound, which is amazing. Now, fair to point out that, while Kadiri Richmond was out of the game, Zuby, their center, who was dominant and just destroyed Rutgers down the stretch. He played half of this stretch. So half the stretch was off the floor, half the stretch was on the floor. But St. John's only got 1 rebound over a 6-minute period, where Rutgers grabbed 8. So they had a +7 rebounding margin during that 22-0 run. That is massive. 6 defensive rebounds, 2 offensive rebounds, which they scored off of both. PJ Hayes had one of those offensive rebounds, and I believe J. Mike had the other. But PJ Hayes was phenomenal in this stretch. 8 points. He nailed a 3. He had 2 layups. One was in transition, had an assist, had an offensive rebound, and was 1 of 1 from the foul line. He did it all. He was very efficient in this game overall, finishing with 13 points. But he really showed his value from an efficiency standpoint. He was super efficient last year at San Diego. But his ability to make plays, hit shots, and again, he's shooting threes and making layups. That's what you want. And he was able to do it. And it was really fun to see. So he gave this team a real boost off the bench during this stretch. In addition, just in terms of the lineup, so the bulk of the players on the court at the time, Durkak, you had PJ Hayes, Ace Bailey was there most of the time. Dylan Harper was there a good portion. Agbole was out there for most of the time. He just had 1 rebound. Didn't contribute a lot, but I do think his size factor helped in terms of keeping St. John's off the glass a little bit. And then Jermichael Davis. But that was really kind of the 6-man rotation that played during this stretch. Lineups are going to be fascinating to watch for with this team. Tyson Acuff still working his way back from an injury. Zach Martini, he played limited action in this game due to foul trouble. There's going to be so many different combinations that CPI is going to be mix and match. And obviously, in terms of foul trouble, in terms of, matchups, he's going to really, I think you're going to see minutes fluctuate quite a bit this season, aside from obviously Ace and Dylan getting, probably around 30, 32, 35 minutes a game. All the other minutes distributed is going to really be, I think, different game to game. You're going to have your core rotation, but I think, you could see some riding of the hot hand at times. Like Dirk Keck's example in the St. John's game, he was so dominant defensively in that first half that he got a lot of run in that second half. He's a little bit, he's just 1 of 7 from the floor. That's got to change if he wants to get those types of minutes on a regular basis. He played 29 minutes in the game. But again, a ton of encouraging things from this team. And to get it from those players that were out there, Ace during this stretch was 3 of 5 from the floor, 1 of 3 from 3. Did hit a mid-range jumper during that stretch, was 2 of 3 from the foul line. Did have a turnover. And then Dylan, he had a 3-pointer. It all got started, by the way, after Ace missed his first 5 shots of the game. Inbounds play. Dylan bounce pass to Ace, cutting in the lane and dunking it. And that started it all. So that was great to see as well. So Dylan had that assist. He was 1 of 2 from the floor, had a steal during that stretch, as I mentioned as well. So just contributions from pretty much everybody during that 6+ minute stretch. And it pushed them out to a 30-18 lead. Obviously, St. John's came back in the second half. I've talked about it at length in that rapid reaction, but also talking with Joe Jackson. You saw at the end of that game with J. Mike and Durkak out there, Dylan Harper drove. The defense collapsed on him because they didn't kind of respect their 3-point shooting ability in that moment down the stretch. You also didn't have the rack crowd. So there's a lot of factors that'd be different. That's why I think you see PJ Hayes. If he keeps playing like this, PJ Hayes is going to fight for minutes, and he's going to earn those minutes. And I think Zach Martini is going to be out there too. So you're going to have shooters for Dylan that's going to help open up spacing. So you're going to see that 2-man game with Dylan and Ace quite a bit. A lot of screening action to get these guys opportunities to score. It's super exciting. And again, they have a lot to work on defensively. For sure, the 5 spot, there's concerns. Rebounding, there's concerns. Offensively, how well will they flow? Dylan and Ace, getting their shots, getting their looks, taking high percentage looks, but also getting their teammates involved. A long way to go. But that 22-0 run, is something that as Rutgers fans, we have not seen very often at all, especially against a Big East team like St. John's, who's going to be a good team, top half of the Big East for sure, I think, this season. So a lot of takeaways there, but their ability to generate really high percentage, high value offense off of their defense was really a sign to me that this team has a ton of potential. Aside from the individual talent, that is something that Rutgers has just not been able to do under Steve Peichel. To be able to finish at a high percentage and also to be able to get to the rim, hit those threes. They really mixed it up. And defensively, it makes it so hard for teams to be able to kind of react and adjust when they're being disrupted so heavily on the offensive end. So it was a masterclass in terms of this team's potential. And I'm super excited about it. Again, those kill shots, that's going to be something really interesting to watch for this season. And, you know, they were able to shut down the glass during that stretch as well. You know, to be able to out-rebound St. John's +7 when Rutgers pretty much made all their shots and St. John's missed all their shots, that's another encouraging sign. So you're looking for flashes, you're looking for signs. This is a huge sign that this team can be a top 3-4 Big Ten team and make a serious run in March. Now, there's a lot of reasons why they have to get through and they have to get better at to fulfill that potential. But this to me really jumped out, and I wanted to dedicate a whole episode to it. I have plenty more coverage. I have a season preview bonanza coming up with Jared Carino, my annual preview with him. That'll be out later this week. I also have a big interview coming out later this week as well, so stay tuned. And I have a couple other things planned as well before the season tips off on Wednesday, November 6th against Wagner at the Rack. Can't believe this season is rapidly approaching. It's finally here, and I can't wait to go through it with you here at the Scarlet Faithful podcast this season. Thanks so much for listening and watching once again.